All right, hello pre-cal. We are on lesson 11, the quadratic formula. And, the quadratic formula works all the time. The problem is that most students don't actually ever do it correctly. So you need to be very, very careful that you're simplifying and applying the formula correctly. So first of all, the quadratic formula works when your quadratic equation is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So first it has to be in general form where everything is nicely in order, set equal to 0, and then x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you've all heard me sing, oh, you haven't heard me sing that before, but that is the Pop Goes the Weasel, a quadratic formula song, and it's a great one to know. You really need to memorize the quadratic formula. So I'm just going to sing it one more time. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're going to use the quadratic formula, and today in IXL, I'm pretty sure that you can submit answers by decimal, which is really, really nice. So we're going to do it both ways, where we'll simplify it, the algebraic way, and then we'll use the calculator as well. So example 1. Use the quadratic formula to solve, give an exact answer, then round it to the nearest hundredth. So again, you're writing down the directions, and we're going to have a calculator. I'm going to use, there's 2 problems. I'll use both calculators, so one for each. All right, so we want to give an exact answer, but also round to the nearest hundredth. So first of all, we need to be in the proper form, and this is not in the proper form. So I'm going to go ahead and move this term to the right-hand side, so we're set equal to 0. To move the term across the equal sign, it changes sign. So positive 8x squared minus 24x plus 18 equals 0. Now we can see that our a value is 8. The b value is negative 24. And the c value is 18. Make sure you include the sign. Be very careful. That is negative 24, not just a 24. And I'm going to go ahead and write down the quadratic formula just so we can remember. So x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, I'm going to go ahead and plug in the numbers that we can. So when I sing the formula, I'm very specifically saying the opposite of b, and the reason that I'm saying the opposite of b is because so many students think that it's always negative, that it's negative b. Whatever b is, it must be negative. That's not what that means. It means it's the opposite of whatever your b value is. If you really wanted to know, the mathematics that's happening is the negative is on the outside, and we're substituting in negative 24 for the b value. Well, the negative 24 turns out to be positive 24, which is why I'd much prefer to say the opposite of b. So we can plug that in. The opposite of b turns out to be positive 24. Then we have plus or minus the square root of. There's a lot of this that I like you to do in your head, like b squared. Well, we don't have to. We'll just plug it in. I'm going to go ahead and plug in negative 24 squared. You do have to be very careful, because if you don't have the parentheses, if you write negative 24 squared and you type that into your calculator, that is wrong. Negative 24 squared does not equal the b value, which is negative 24, squared in its entirety. These are 2 very, very different statements. So it's really important at this level that you're not making that mistake. This should always be positive. This value should always be positive. B squared must be a positive value because it's negative times a negative, positive. All right, so then we have minus 4. And then I'm plugging in the A value of 8 and the C value of 18. And then that's all divided by 2 times our A value of 8. All right, there's a lot to clean up here. I'm going to do all of this stuff that's underneath the radical. I'm going to put it in my calculator just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Casio first. I'm going to go to the menu and go back to the math regular run menu. And I'm going to go ahead and type in, negative 24 squared minus 4 quantity 8, quantity 18. So you can see I have it written exactly how I have it. If you always use parentheses and substitute in this manner using parentheses, you will always get this correct. I promise. Don't use parentheses and suffer the consequences, people. All right, we get 0. Fantastic. All right, so we have x equals 24 plus or minus the square root of 0, all divided by 16. Of course, the square root of 0 is just 0. So what's happening? We have a quadratic equation right here, which normally looks like a parabola, but the square root of 0 is 0. 24 plus or minus 0 is just 24. So what is going on with this parabola? What does it look like? Well, guesses? This reduces, we can divide by 8, so that's going to be 3 over 2. There's only one x-intercept. What does that look like? This is a parabola that is sitting on the x-axis. So whenever it's like sitting, it has one point of intersection. It is what we call tangent to the x-axis. It's touching at one point. So tangent is a word we want to make sure we know and understand, touching at one point. And we can certainly check that on our calculators. Again, we're solving for x, so this should be an x-intercept. On our calculator, we have a great way to test that. I'm going to go on my calculator to the graphing menu. I'm going to delete my previous equations. And I'm going to go ahead and type in this equation that's set equal to 0. Anytime we have an equation set equal to 0, we can double check our solutions really easily. So 8x squared minus 24x plus 18. I'm going to go ahead and graph that. You can see there it is, perched right on the x-axis there. And it looks like 3 over 2. 1.5 is a good estimate, but we're going to use trace. So trace is in yellow, so I'm going to do shift trace, and then just type in 3 over 2, 3 divided by 2, and you can see there it is. That's the x-intercept. Whenever we solve for x, we're finding an x-intercept if we're set equal to 0. So x-intercept, you can see we get 1.5 and have an output value of 0, which is what we were looking for. This is a great way to check solutions. Let's try this next one. Again, we need to set it equal to 0 to get started. So I'm going to move the 9. 4h squared minus 2h minus 9. And I'm not going to rewrite my formula, but hopefully you know it. You have it memorized. So let's see. X equals the opposite of b. Again, here's my a value is 4. My b value is negative 2. And my c value this time is negative 9. So the opposite of b is going to be positive 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared. That would be negative 2 quantity squared minus 4 times the a value of 4 times the c value of negative 9, all divided by 2 times a, 2 times 4. Again, I'm going to put everything under the radical in my calculator. I'm going to grab my other calculator now. So I have, again, using parentheses, that's the way to guarantee that it's correct. Negative 2 quantity squared minus 4 times negative 9. Make sure you're using the negative, which is down by the decimal point, you cannot use subtract 9. Okay, you have to use the proper sign, which is odd. So we get x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 148, all divided by 2 times 4, which is 8. So we do need to simplify 148. I need to look for some perfect squares. That is an interesting number. And I don't know what it's divisible by. I know it's divisible by 2. Let's see if it's divisible by 4. Ooh, all right. That's a good guess. It is 4 times 37. 37 is prime. 4 is a number I can take the square root of, so I can do that. The square root of 4 comes out right in front of the radical. And so we would get x equals 2 plus or minus. The square root of 4 comes out as a 2. And then we have radical 37 left inside the radical. And 8 is dividing each term. So I'm going to split it up so that I reduce correctly. And that is key. Split that 8 to reduce correctly. And then you can reduce 2 divided by 8, or 2 goes into 2 one time and 2 goes into 8 4 times. And then again here, this 2 and 8 also reduces to 1 and 4. So we're left with radical 37 divided by 4. And this is an okay answer. That's the exact answer. It is absolutely exact. But I also asked you to put it in decimal form. So in the decimal, we're going to have 2 answers. I'm going to type in my calculator, 1/4 plus radical 37 divided by 4. So you'll notice that divide by 4 is not under the radical. Be very, very careful. And so I get x is approximately 1.77. It did say to round to the 100th, so tenths, hundredths is that second 7 there. We looked one more decimal place to make sure we don't need to round up. And then I'm going to do 1/4 minus radical 37. Whoops, delete. Delete. Okay, I need to get out from under the radical divided by 4. And I get x is approximately negative 1.27. So you'll have to read the directions on IXL to see if you need to put in the rounded approximation. Be very careful. Or the exact answer. I think both might work. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully that answers all your questions. Have a great one. Bye.